Deion Sanders got a major wake-up call this past weekend. Now he needs to change everything he does in order to turn things around in Boulder.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you're not missing out on any of the coverage we have coming up for you, because there's a lot to talk about, right? The Colorado Buffaloes have just lost 52-17 and 53-7. They've been outscored 105-24 in their past two games. So clearly some things need to be changed. And I'm going to give you 5 steps that Deion Sanders needs to go through or make or change. I'm going to give you a 5-step plan. We'll call it that. A 5-step plan for Deion Sanders and how he could fix Colorado. I'm going to talk about Juju Lewis and the latest on him, whether he's going to start or not. And then I'm going to preview the West Virginia game a little bit later. Let's dive into my 5-step plan for Deion Sanders. So clearly things are going wrong, right? You had a season last year where you went 9-4. The year before you went 4-8, but that was a dramatic improvement from the 1-11 season that Carl Durrell had before he was fired. You go 4-8 in year one, you go 9-4 in year two, and it's like, okay, you are on the right track. Looks like you're going to be contending for Big 12 titles year in and year out, right? Colorado was like a game or so away from doing so last year. And then all of a sudden you plummet off the face of the earth this season, right? You get a little hasty on your quarterback decision after one game against a Georgia Tech team that's probably going to make the playoff or going to come close to making the playoff, right? They were really good. And you sort of just immediately shoot yourself in the foot. And I think there's a lot of things that went wrong this year. And we're just going to dive into what I think Deion Sanders needs to change. So up first, step 1, retool the staff on and off the field. So you have too many inexperienced coaches. I talked about this before. There's just a handful of coaches where they had never coached before, unless it was if it wasn't for Deion Sanders, right? Whether that was joining him at Trinity, the high school in Texas, and then going to Jackson State with him, or being hired here at Colorado for the first time as their first job. And it's not like they're analysts. It's not like they're advisors or whatever other roles you could give people. They are legit position coaches. So these are the guys that are in charge of developing people. These are the guys that are in charge of coaching guys up. And I think there's knowledge to be bestowed upon people, right? I don't think that, like Warren Sapp, I'm sure he has tons of knowledge to give to defensive tackles, to defensive linemen. I'm sure Marshall Faulk, Kevin Mathis, Pat Shermer, all these guys have knowledge, right? But are they experienced at coaching at the college level? No. Are they experienced at recruiting at the college level? No. And I'll get to recruiting a little bit later, but you just have so many people around you where they don't necessarily have the experience or, the tangible experience that they need. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Like, you have not enough development, right? I think the corners were, I expected them to be one of the best units in the Big 12. And I don't think I'd have to go on a limb to say DJ McKinney's draft stock has taken a hit. Preston Hodge, I think he came back with the hopes that his draft stock would surge, and I would say it's taken a hit, right? The other corners that have mixed in and out, not so good. Like, you have a ton of inexperience and underperformance there. The linebackers have been a disaster this season. The defense line is not as physical it needs to be, right? There's just so many problems all over the place. And it's like, okay, that comes to coaching, that comes down to development. And I think you need to find guys who have experience, who have built up rosters, who have developed guys before. So I think retooling the staff on the field, helping yourself, right? If you're Deion Sanders, you need people who could help you help yourself in a way. You need guys who can make your life easier and put themselves in the right position, or put the players in the right position. So that way you're not really having to take the blame for everything like you are. Because, I'm not going to say it's not entirely his fault, but Deion Sanders is taking a lot of blame that really has nothing to do with him. Like, the play calling has been horrendous on offense. Defensively, they've regressed tremendously. They are one of the worst offenses in college football and one of the worst defenses in college football statistically. Up next, when I said retool on and off the field, Colorado already has a GM. They already have that stuff in place, but they really need to figure out how they're evaluating talent. I think we could safely say that this transfer portal class, for the most part, there's been some hits, right? Tafiq Byard is a good one. He's done really well for the Buffs this year. I think there's been certain guys where it's like they've performed well, Sincere Brown was a solid addition. The offensive line was really good. But then you look at the defensive side, and it's like there's a lot of misses there. Caden Salter's a miss at quarterback. Jaheim Otis at defensive lineman, or defensive tackle, excuse me. Just a lot of misses all over the place, right? And if you're Coach Prime, you really need to ask yourself, do I have the right people who have enough experience in identifying and acquiring talent? If you think the answer is yes, and this was just a bad batch, or maybe it was the coaching that's more so the issue here rather than the talent identification, then you stick with your guys, but you tell them like, hey, we need to do a better job of finding talent. Okay, up next, because I mean, coaching and recruiting is a big deal, right? He has to take recruiting seriously. I don't think Deion Sanders really values high school recruiting in the manner he should. I think a lot of people defend the transfer portal method, and at first I wanted to see how it would go. And I think what we could say from the transfer portal method is it could give you very high highs with Shedeur Sanders, LeJontay Wester, Travis Hunter, but it could also give you low lows. And I think we're looking at that this year. I mean, even in 2023, the offensive line was a failure. The defense line was a disaster, right? There's more instances of a roster being built through the portal not working than there are the roster being built through the portal working. And so I think for Deion Sanders, he really has to decide, like, if he wants to win, is he willing to commit to recruiting the high school ranks? Because, I mean, we know the blue chip ratio is there. It's well and alive. It has not been proven wrong yet. Every champion winner of the college football season has a roster that's 50% or 51% made up of 4 or 5-star recruits that they recruited, right? Even with this transfer portal era happening, that still remains true, right? You look at Ohio State last year. Yes, they brought in Will Howard. Great. He was sort of the difference for them at quarterback. But Will Howard filled a need. They had Jeremiah Smith, right? They had JT rushing the passer. They had Jack Sawyer rushing the passer. Caleb Downs was a nice addition through the portal. Sonny Styles is one of the best linebackers in the country, right? They have so many guys that they recruit that they're able to just sort of plug transfers in. It's not like, hey, we're bringing in a new wave of transfers and we're just going to hope they mesh. Because my problem with the transfer portal method is I don't think it's easy to sustain a culture when you have 30 to 40 new guys every year. And I also don't think you can really tailor your system in any particular way because it has to change so much. Right? I think when you bring in so many new guys that are one-year rentals, if you will, like it reminds me of the NBA or the MLB where you make a trade at the deadline. It's like, okay, we have this guy for 5 months, so we're not really invested in him in the long term, but we're hoping he works out now. It's like you're not really to establish a culture, identity, or anything. And so I think recruiting is a bigger deal. And I think one of the best ways that Deion Sanders can recruit, because I think Deion Sanders easily could put together a top 15, possibly even a top 10 class year in and year out if he wanted to. I do. I honestly do. He has the name. He has the cachet. Even with the staff not working out, I think you can make staff changes, like bring in a Rashad Samples from Oregon to be your offensive coordinator. I don't know if that'd be a role he'd be wanting to take, or Jerry Newhiles, or what, like names like that, where it's like they're young, they're hot names, like they recruit well, like guys want to play for them. Bring that to Colorado. You bring the recruiting savvy, you bring their abilities with you, and then you also, as Coach Prime, dive in here and there and are the closer, right? I think Deion Sanders taking at-home visits or going to high school games would be a big deal. And this is a quote that I think is really, he said this earlier this year to the USA Today. He said, quote, "That's how I recruit." This was when he was on the ABC, when he was talking to Tamron Hall. "I don't go to nobody's school or nobody's house. I'm not doing that. I'm too old to be going to somebody's house or somebody's school, somebody's house. All the kids that I'm recruiting, as a matter of fact, they in the portal. They're grown men with kids. They don't need me to come around their crib and try to convince them to come play for me. Nah." Yeah, that mindset needs to change, right? Because you did that this year. It didn't work, right? If Deion Sanders would go to say, he doesn't need to do it all the time, right? Because I understand he's got health problems. I understand the traveling a lot could take a lot of toll on the body. But if he were to go to, say, 5 to 10 houses, or say 21 recruits throughout the year, he's going to call them the Prime 21, where he picks 21 recruits. And I don't know if that's a lot or not enough, but 21 recruits just to go with his brand. 21 recruits, the Prime 21, where he goes to a school or to an at-home visit to show that recruit how much he wants them. I think that would make, I mean, that's the biggest recruiting tool in college football, arguably, right? When Nick Saban went to people's houses, it was a big deal for those guys, right? When he went to those schools, it was a big deal for those guys. And I understand Deion Sanders thinks he's old, and I understand he values the transfer portal more than recruiting, but that's sort of what got you here, right? You need to get out of here in terms of struggling and get back to succeeding. And I think the best way to do that is buying into the high school recruiting ranks. Now, here's where it gets difficult. And I'm going to stick on recruiting for a little bit here. They're averaging 16 high school commits per class, and that's mostly because they had 21 in the first year. The past 2 years, they had 12 and 15. They only have 13 this year. The problem with this is, or the problem with the way the roster is currently built is there's 38 seniors or grad students, right? So he's going to have to lean on the portal again a lot, and that's not even counting guys who leave Colorado's program through the portal this offseason. I'm sure it's going to happen because it happens to everybody. So you really have to go all in on the portal in 2027. Or excuse me, all in on recruiting in 2027, because it's a little too late now. I'm sure you could flip guys here and there right now, but in my eyes, there's no reason that Colorado should be third to last in the Big 12 and barely out recruiting UCF and Oklahoma State. That should not happen, right? I think Deion Sanders' brand is strong enough to be a top 2 recruiting juggernaut in the Big 12, right? Texas Tech has a lot of money, so it's going to be hard to beat them for years to come, but I think you should be up there with Texas Tech and BYU, not down there with the depths of the Big 12. So recruiting needs to be taken much more seriously, and I think that's going to be really the hardest adjustment for him outside of firing the guys who are close to him. Is like he has to change his identity. He has to go back on the Louis luggage stuff because it's not working. It's just not. Or he's just going to have to accept the fact that there's going to be years where you're really good and then there's going to be years where you're really bad, and that's all because you're not really able to build that culture and develop these guys as you need to. Step 3, find an early identity, right? We've heard this problem in both years that Coach Prime has struggled really in Colorado, which is they don't have an identity and it takes way too long to get into the identity. Now, part of this, I think, guys, like they figure out. I think and I think if you focus on establishing that identity early and often, like in the offseason, like you force the issue on the identity. And I don't really know, and I'm not going to pretend I do, like how easy it is to form an identity, but you have to at least find one or find the concept of one and just really hammer it home, right? I think when it's week 8 or when Colorado was, I think it was after, I'm trying to think, the Houston game, was when Coach Prime said, we're trying to find our identity, and it was our Wyoming game, something along those lines where the upcoming schedule was BYU, TCU, Iowa State, Utah, and that's when they were hoping to find their identity. That can't happen. Your identity needs to be formed in the offseason and executed in the season. So find the identity early and often, hammer it home. 4, the transfer portal. Don't give up on it, but use it as a source to fill needs, but not create problems, right? When you go all in on the transfer portal 1 year and you go in on 38 seniors, if you will, and half of them are busts, it's like, okay, the season is screwed now, right? The transfer portal, as I talked about with Ohio State, as I talked about with, I mean, Ohio State's a tough comparison because they're obviously one of the biggest spenders in college football, but there's programs out there that I think Colorado are a little bit more on par with, like BYU, for instance. Transfer portal, right? They got Carson Ryan, the tight end. They got Bear Bachmeier from Stanford, right? They filled holes. They had a good roster of guys that they had recruited, and then they filled the needs where they had them. Utah this year. Utah is a team that Colorado should consistently out-recruit, and is a team that Colorado should really – he talks about how much he admires Kyle Whittingham. Model your plan after Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham recruits really well and develops guys really well, but he also went out and got some really solid transfers. Devin Dampier, Wayshawn Parker at running back, right? Ryan Davis at receiver, right? They brought in a bunch of guys or a handful of guys that could fill the needs, right? The transfer portal is a crutch. It should not be the thing you rely on year in and year out to define if you have success or not, right? It should be like, okay, we have a really good roster and we added 2 portal receivers that we think could take us to the next level. Or we had a really good roster everywhere but defensive tackle, so we added 3 or 4 defensive tackles, and boom, now we're good, right? I think that's how the portal needs to be used. And then 5, Shedeur Sanders said that this team is missing alphas. They're missing dogs, right? I think if you're Deion Sanders, you have to anoint these leaders and these dogs in the offseason, right? So moving forward, Tafik Bayard, Julian Lewis, I would make those guys the face of the programs, right? And Jordan Seaton, obviously. But it helps that Juju Lewis and Tafik Bayard play key positions in the sense of like the sexier positions, if you will. You need to anoint leadership, because I think the one thing that Colorado has struggled with this year is player accountability, right? Caden Salter talked about it multiple times that he was struggling to lead because of stuff that was happening with him being benched and other stuff like that. The bye week was a prime example of players not holding each other accountable, right? You have two of your best players, Omarion Miller, who honestly probably should be a leader, but I don't know if he's ready for that. And Joseph Williams showing up late. So there's that, right? You have so many instances last year and the year before where it's like everyone followed the lead of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter because they were very clearly made the leaders. Now, it helps that they were the two best players, but it was clear that, like, hey, you want to be great, you follow them. And I think Colorado really needs to focus on establishing leaders early and often. So those are my 5 steps for Deion Sanders to really turn things around in Colorado. I think he could do it, and I think he should do it. When we come back, we're going to talk about Juju Lewis and how he's possibly making his first start of his young career on Saturday. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Doer. I've heard the most amazing thing about these jeans. They're on the way, and I literally can't wait to wear them. I'm going to be wearing the Performance Denim Slim Straight in black. I love them, or I love how they look, and I'm really excited because I've heard nothing but great things about the comfortability. They have 5 times more stretch than the traditional denim, And my favorite part, Doers are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim, and they're more durable, so you don't have to wash them as often. And I know that's a little weird, but like a lot of people, their jeans are so cheaply made where it's like, okay, you wear them once or twice and you got to wash them, right? These are allowed to be worn a little bit more. You're going to be comfy, and they're going to stay cleaner longer. So simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. And you can check out Doer in-store in Denver. It's at 2621 Lanier Street. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Mention my promo code LOCKEDONDenver in-store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopduer.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopduer.com/LockedOnDenver. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets could feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app is made super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love that because you tilt it and it's like, oh, cool, I can see the 50 from here. And that's what I think a lot of apps don't allow you to do. So Game Time is the best way to do it. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Juju Lewis, the true freshman 5-star quarterback. He shined in his limited snaps against Arizona, right? He had the 59-yard touchdown bomb. Very decisive, has a lot of zip on the ball. I like it. Can make I think one of his best throws was probably like a 10-yard hitch, right? It was, I don't know if it was 10 yards. It was a little hitch route I forgot who it was towards the end of the game. It was his final throw of the game. And it was just one of those things where it was decisive. It was like the guy was open and he just fired it in there, right? And it reminded me of I think it was the BYU game, if I'm not mistaken, where Caden Salter had 2 guys open on hitch-like routes and didn't throw to either of them, right? And Juju Lewis had that confidence. He zipped it in there. He's also more mobile than I expected, right? Because the only 2 times I've seen him was at the spring game, so he didn't get to run around too much. And then Delaware game, which I can't believe they played him in that game just because it was a waste of time. And they're burning his red shirt, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But according to CBS Sports' Matt Zenitz, Lewis is getting the start this week, and I think that's a great move for the team. I think that's a great move for for Lewis, because it shows like, hey, we are invested in you as our long-term solution. We believe in you. Even if he can't lead Colorado to a bowl game, it's like, hey, we are handing you the keys, right? That was the whole recruiting picture and pitch with Juju, was you have a chance to play early. Shedeur Sanders is handing you the keys to the program. Now give him the keys to the program and build around him and hype up this freshman class, and hype up the future recruits, and be like, hey, we believe in the youngsters, and it starts right here with Juju Lewis. I think West Virginia is going to be a good test because they look really good against Houston. They kind of blew Houston out. They have Scotty Fox at quarterback, who's their 4th quarterback of the year. And yeah, Juju Lewis, it's going to be a tough game on the road. Mountaineer. Morgantown. I don't know why I couldn't think of Morgantown. Morgantown, hostile, rowdy environment. But it's a good experience for Juju, and I think it shows that you are all in on him. Now, here's the red shirt debacle, if you will. Do I love Colorado burning his red shirt for absolutely no reason? Not really. But, I mean, he's going to get valuable starts. So there's that. At the end of the day, he's going to start. I mean, you got this game. Assuming he starts the rest of the way, he's going to start 3 games, and then he's going to be the starter next year. So he's going to have an opportunity, and the year after that, really, if he wants. I mean, no, he will have to. Yeah, he's going to have an opportunity to have a lot more starts under his belt. And I think if you're Colorado, you're more focused on keeping him in the program and keeping him happy than you are on like, hey, we're really worried about this red shirt. And I think it's a little sign of desperation. And I think you probably could have gone to him earlier in the year rather than bouncing back between Staub and Salter. But if you're Deion Sanders, I admire the risk. I mean, you ignite a little life into the program. It's clear that the players loved him and responded well to him. There's a video of him talking to Joseph Williams on the sideline, showing some leadership, which, I mean, that was sort of Coach Prime's complaint with him a couple of weeks ago. And that video that went a little bit viral was he wasn't leading. Well, he seemed pretty vocal during the game. And I mean, big for Juju, excited to see what he does, because I do think that he has a lot of potential. And I mean, worst case scenario, he just gets experience. Best case scenario, he goes on a little win streak here and Colorado makes a bowl game. That'd be great, right? That would be the turnaround for the season. So we'll see what happens there. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Mountaineers. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next, the fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Let's talk about the Mountaineers. So don't let the Big 12 standings confuse you. I would say that right now, West Virginia looks like the better team between Colorado and themselves. They've been improving lately, whereas Colorado's been struggling, right? Whereas Colorado's been outscored 105-24 in their past 2 games. West Virginia kept it close against TCU. They lost by 6. And then they went to Houston, which, I mean, it's not the most hostile environment, but they beat Houston by 10 points and kind of shook up the Big 12 standings. And Scotty Fox is a name that I don't think most people around college football have heard of, but clearly is a dual threat guy that Colorado's going to need to worry about. Like, if I'm Colorado's defense, I'm a little worried about these final 3 games, because while I think they're all winnable, you have Scotty Fox, who against Houston, he threw for 157 yards and a touchdown. Great. 10 carries, 65 yards, 2 touchdowns with a long of 34. The longest on the game, by the way, for the Mountaineers. He can move. He could scoop. He's a big dude, too. He's 6'2", 215. Pretty big guy, right? You then have Arizona State and Jeff Sims, who just rushed for almost 300 yards this past game against Iowa State. He set the record of 228 yards rushing on 29 carries, 7.9 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns and a long of 88 yards. Then you have Avery Johnson to finish the game. Or to finish the season. So Colorado has 3 really good dual threat quarterbacks coming up. I think West Virginia, we kind of got a pulse for how dialed in this Colorado team was against Arizona. I said we're going to be able to tell if they were bought in or not, and I don't think they are. But with the change of Julian Lewis, maybe that excites the team a little bit more. So we'll see once and for all, does this team really care about the rest of this season? If not, it's going to be very disappointing, and these Colorado games are going to get painfully brutal to watch, or even more painfully brutal to watch. But they can also turn things around. So West Virginia on the road, it's probably going to be a little bit chilly. You're going to be playing at, I think it's noon Eastern, so earlier in the day. And I think Colorado can win this game. That being said, it really needs to see we really need to see some buy-in from the squad. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, please. We're really close to 8,000 subscribers, and I will see all of you guys tomorrow.